Hey everyone, if this is your first talk with us, welcome to PMM Fest. And for those of you that have already been tuning in, welcome back. We hope you have been or will be enjoying what's going on here. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to say a big thank you to all our sponsors, partners, festival attendees, and speakers. Without all of you lot, none of this could have gone ahead. If you're not already a member of our Slack community, do head over there and sign up. There's going to be lots of product marketing conversations, resources, and chit chat going on in there, both during the festival and long after. So that's all from me. Enjoy the talk.
Hey everyone, how's it going? I know it's towards the end of the day. It's like, 4:10, you have one more session after this. I'm sure a lot of you tired and waiting to kind of commute back to home, so thanks for being here. This topic is actually really dear to me. I've been doing marketing, I want to say it since I was like 9, right? So my mom has always been in marketing. It's like, talking about his mom, what? That's weird. She used to run marketing at Pepsi and at Kraft. So I remember Bring Your Kid to Work Day was actually building marketing campaigns and whatever agency's office was working on the marketing campaign at that given time, like Young and Rubicon or Draft FCB, right? So, marketing's always been kind of important. But what I found, especially getting into product marketing, is that people don't always respect it, right? So what I'm going to talk about is some of the tactics that you can leverage to help people start seeing product marketing in a very different light. In fact, thinking more like a CEO and how it can help you benefit from a business standpoint. But first, a little bit about myself. Right, so I would say I specialize in kind of high growth unicorn startup companies, which is funny because the first thing you see up there is actually EMC Corporation. And that's when I found that I needed to quickly get into startups. EMC Corporation, I started there after graduating, worked there for about 2.5 years. It's based in Hopkinton. It was bought by Dell, so now it's Dell EMC. So if you see that, that's EMC was initially on its own. After that, I realized that startups are way cooler. Why? Because you can do way more and you can actually function as a leader within an organization, and many times at a much younger age. So I worked at a company called BitGlass. BitGlass is what we call a cloud access security broker. I know it's the security space. If you're not in it, you've probably never heard of it before. But I was the first product marketing manager there. And that's when I first got my kind of first foray into wearing multiple hats, right? EMC before that was a 40,000 person company. You're a cog in a system, and it feels like if you kind of moved on, they would just replace you with someone new. And I hated that, right? My goal was to generate as much value for the organization as possible. And that's what I was able to do at BitGlass. The next company I went to was a company called Docker. Anyone ever heard of Docker in this room? Awesome, yeah. I was about number 115 at that company, the second product marketer at the company, and the goal was to take it from an open source, awesome unicorn, multi-million person developer community to actually a really successful paid enterprise game. So I spent about 2 years under a woman named Betty Junod. I know many of you in the room actually know her, which is awesome, and really just building out the Docker platform, right? How do we make money from this thing that was a really successful open source company, but now needed to actually have some revenue behind it? And that's not an easy, transition. So the goal was, how do we do it? What are some of the cool tactical things that we can leverage? Who do we focus on? Understanding the customer base and what the challenges they had were. So it was a really awesome experience. And then Zscaler happened. I actually was introduced to this company by one of my mentors, a guy named Howard Ting. He was one of the main guys who brought Palo Alto Networks to a public company, also Nutanix to a public company as well. And Zscaler is a really differentiated platform, right? So we compete with Palo Alto Networks, right? So instead of kind of leveraging these giant appliance boxes that are hosted in data centers, we took that and we delivered a as a cloud service. And now we have around 3,000 companies. So everything at GE and Siemens, they all go through the Zscaler Security Cloud. So again, a really cool company in that way. That's enough about that. What you're here to learn about is how PMMs can start acting and thinking like CEOs. So when you think of a CEO, you don't often think about marketing now, right? It's often one of these three, right? They come from sales, right? They've driven some kind of massive sales organization for years, whether it's at IBM or Red Hat or something like that, right? It's finance because they understand the numbers. They were a CFO somewhere for the last 20 years or so. Or in the Valley here, or San Francisco, engineering is big. A lot of companies are these whiz kids, geniuses that are building out companies and kind of just looking to disrupt this world. Now, the challenge with product marketing is that we often do this. We don't feel comfortable always kind of being out in front of it. We don't feel comfortable being in front of customers. The business acumen isn't always something that we kind of double down on. And in many organizations, they don't empower us to think differently. But that's what I want us to start doing, right? So I know product managers and engineering, especially at the very kind of tech-savvy companies, they tend to have the kind of center of gravity there, right? And they look at us as, hey, you're going to make the slide deck. You're the slide guy or girl, or whatever it is, and that's all you're kind of good at, right? Or if I need a campaign, I'll come to you. But when it comes to business or driving a plan, you're not often my first stop on the train. But I want to change that, right? So one of the cool things I saw was the State of Product Marketing survey, and I'm sure every presentation you've been in has called that out. And I'm just like almost the last person on the second day, so I'm sure you've heard many of these stats before, but I'll say them anyway because they're really important, right? The fact that many of you in the audience want a seat at the leadership table. You want to be able to actually have more influence in whatever it is company that you work for, right? And at a scale at 10, we get about a 6.5 in terms of how much influence we think we have. 6.5 is a 65%. That's pretty much a D. Pretty much we're not doing a great job at it. And that bothers me because I love marketing. Right? I've been doing it for a long time since I was a kid. Right? So I feel like it's up to us, the folks in this room, to help rebrand product marketing as a whole. Right? We want the leadership aspect of it. We want clarity on that role. Many of you are doing different things. Right? So some of you are more focused on demand gen. Some of you are more focused on the pricing, which is an awesome presentation earlier today around pricing and packaging. Quite interesting, right? But I think what you need to think about is, although you're doing this, right, almost 60% of you are focused on generating new revenue for the organization, which is great because as a CEO, you need to be thinking about the dollars, right? How are you generating new dollars for your organization? The other thing is MQLs, which was pretty kind of weird to see, right? Because demand gen is often on the hook for generating your MQLs in many organizations, but about 45% of you are actually working on that now, and 42% are on retaining customers. So I see that as kind of, driving some upsell, maybe some cross-sell mixed in there as well, right? The good thing is you're doing a lot of what's required already from a CEO perspective. We just need to put it together in a really cohesive plan to do so and help others in the organization, whether they're in PM or engineering or a senior executive role, see us in that light, right? So the big kind of premise of this presentation now is seeing yourself in a different light, right? Product marketing doesn't have to be seen as only the marketer, only the slide person. You can be seen as a person who's actually the owner of your business unit, driving dollars for whatever it is the product that you're driving, right? So I have my evolution scale here, right? And some are like, the chimpanzee, some are dinosaurs and all that. I built a product marketing one for us, okay? So on the left-hand side, you have kind of the old world of what people viewed product marketing as, right? I call it the slide jockey, right? They'll go to you when there's a presentation or there's a couple typos or they don't really know how to make a transition work or build and like, hey, just help me out, right? Instead of you being the one to actually get in front and present it. The next kind of phase is I call it the slide jockey plus. They're a little more respected. They come to for more advanced slides, things like that. The next kind of iteration in this evolution, I guess I would say, is the solid PMM, the person who is kind of that rock star. They're confident. This, I think, is probably where most product marketers fall. But what I want to focus on is on the right side, the right-hand side here. All right, getting in front of customers. If you're building the presentations already, there's no one in the organization that is a better fit to actually give that presentation than you. You just have to believe that. You have to think that. How many of you have been in a presentation where your product manager is doing the pitch deck that you built? And you're like, I could do that, right? And probably way better. Yeah, you might not have the technical depth on that, but many of the beginning conversations that you're having with customers are more so teaching them about a new approach, about a new architecture or a new way of thinking. You don't need to be super, super technical to do that. Now, it does pay off to have some good knowledge of the technology. I think there was a presentation, like the first one this morning, where you want to be able to give a demo. excellent. But if you're not at that point, work towards that point, right? Don't just think that over day I'm gonna understand a deep dive into how to do, a super advanced pitch to, as GE or whoever your biggest customer you're trying to get is. It doesn't happen every day. We have to work at it. Personally, what I do is I block off an hour for myself and for my team every Friday, right? And I call it, the tech review hour, right? And literally, no matter what is going on, how pressing other things are going on, you dedicate an hour out of the day to just understand the technology, right? That question that you had the week or that came up in that customer meeting, you had no idea what that was, or that acronym that popped up, you're like, I really don't know. Use that hour on a Friday or a day that works for you. We can go and study that. I promise you it'll come in handy. You'll be surprised at how much you actually learn about your technology. Now, the last piece here that I'll talk on is the business leader. All right, this is the most advanced piece. This is when we think of PMM 2.0. Right? You want to get to the point where you're understanding how to run it, right? Thinking like a CEO in everything you do, and everything you do on the marketing front maps back to the dollars in. And I promise you, the closer you remain to the money, the more important you will be seen to the organization. Right? I've spoken with many folks in the audience kind of just throughout the day, and the big thing that they struggle with is credibility. I promise you that as you build marketing programs and messaging and positioning to your personas that generate money, your senior leaders will listen to you and listen to you often. And the more that happens, the bigger your prowess becomes, right? Your importance, your personal brand within your organization. And you'll find that sales organizations and senior leaders come to you for recommendations. When before, you were just a slide jockey. So this is a really important concept to understand. Get close to the dollars. Understand where in your company are you making money? Where are you struggling? Right? Find that gap where the organization is struggling to find dollars. Fill it. People will listen. But you have to think that way, right? So yes, people are going to come with their own kind of predispositions around what product marketing is. Prove them wrong, right? And use dollars and money to help do that. The other thing is you don't have to just make it up and do it yourself. Right? You don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's been so many phenomenal companies out there that have been successful and differentiated. And one of my favorite brands is Amazon. Right? Their customer service is phenomenal. Right? Something breaks or you need to return something, gets super, super easy. Right? We've all done that. And it's because they're obsessed with making their customers happy. So the two kind of macro level things you'll take away in this presentation is get close to the money and get customer obsessed. And the best way to do that is to understand what your customers want. What do they need? What is their real challenge? Right? And that challenge just isn't, a basic level. There's multiple pieces. There's an external challenge. That external challenge manifests itself as an internal one, which should be a philosophical one, in that something wrong. This shouldn't be the case, right? So you need to look at challenges in different layers, not just at a surface level, okay? Satya Nadella is one of the best CEOs, I think, out there, right? And he's the CEO of Microsoft. And you think about, since he's been there maybe, 4 years or so, Microsoft has turned itself around. It's now seen as one of the most innovative companies. They're going out, they're building, communities of developers. Before that, it wasn't the case, right? So they're really quick to kind of pivot. And a lot of that's through Satya Nadella, right? And he has an amazing business strategy for Microsoft. So what we need to be able to do is say, hey, all these awesome marketing plans that we're doing, let's translate that into an actual business strategy instead. And there's 3 ways to actually do that. The first is to actually understand how you're making money. So know your revenue numbers, in and out. Right? Who here could tell me your revenue numbers today? Right? Who here can tell me your revenue numbers for your product? Who here can tell me what's your split between net new and upsell? Great. Each of those times I asked the question, we saw quite a big reduction amount of people that could actually answer that. But it's important to just be able to memorize those and rattle them out, right? Another aspect I would think of is your partners as well. If you are a company that resells through partners at all, which Zscaler does a lot, you want to understand who are the partners that you can work with to actually help you drive revenue, right? Not just your technology partners where you're integrating. I'm talking about the folks who can actually help you land or expand an existing deals. The second piece is driving a unique marketing plan based on those revenue goals. Again, everything you do on marketing, map it back to your dollars. And it has some very clear-cut examples of what that looks like and what we've done within Zscaler to actually be, in my mind, successful in that. The third thing is work with your demand gen team. It's funny, this idea of why PMMs should start thinking like CEOs actually came from my CMO currently at Zscaler, Micheline Nijme. The first meeting I had with her one-on-one, she said, look at it. Product marketing is the heart, demand gen are the veins and the arteries, right? So what we need to be able to do is come up with the messaging and positioning to help demand gen use throughout their content syndication methods, social media, paid, digital, whatever that might be, to leverage, right? So work with your CMO in that mind, right? If you are the CEO, demand gen is your CMO. The other piece are your subject matter experts, which in this case are going to be your product managers. Within Zscaler, we created this idea of a pod. So every pod is split up by the different products we have. So we have 4 different platforms that we drive, and each of those platforms has a demand gen owner, a product marketer, and a product manager as well, right? And every week we meet to discuss whatever it is we need for that week, right? If there's a new product feature coming out, how do we look at it and actually we actually rate it. Is this a tier 1, 2, 3, or 4? And everything that's a tier 1 gets a higher kind of focus in terms of the marketing standpoint. Tier 4, not so much, right? So work closely with those teams to actually be as kind of your trusted advisors in a way if you're the CEO. I promise I get into some more tactical things when you look at knowing your revenue numbers, right? So these are some things you need to start considering. So how much revenue does your product actually generate this year, right? What is your goal? It could be 5 million if you're a startup. It could be 20 million. It could be $1 billion, whatever it is. Think about what that is. The next, think about your split. Is it going to be majority net new? Is there majority upsell, right? For the 2 products that I focus on at Zscaler, if I look at the split for, let's call something called Zscaler Private Access, which is one of the 4, right? My split is between 55 and 45% net new to upsell. So I need to make sure that this dual strategy that I have to drive revenue, right, is intact. So I need to have specific things on the net new side where I'm working with, I'm looking at the top 500 customers and looking at what's the penetration rate for ZPA. If I have, the top 300 ZIA customers on the upsell, how many of them have ZPA? How many of them don't? What is the right messaging to actually get them to take some action, right? And of course, it's way easier to sell to your existing customers. So consider that. And I would consider that some of the kind of low-hanging fruit, if you will, when you look at that split. But first off, understanding the numbers behind that and then focusing your strategy based on that. The other piece is, what's the use case that is most lucrative for you? For my product, I have 4 main use cases that I consider, right? There's a replacement for, let's say, a VPN. There's securing access to AWS and Azure and public cloud instances and things like that. There's mergers and acquisitions, and then there's third parties who need to connect to apps. But I know that VPN is going to be my number 1 use case. So guess what? I put all my marketing effort into the VPN aspect of it. It's important, right? Because I look at it in a couple ways. You have your land motion and your expand motion, right? What's going to get you that easiest transactional deal? And then you can grow on and add more from there, right? Important to consider these factors when you look at it, especially if you're from the mindset of the CEO. Now, yes, we're marketers. So you need to understand what are the things that are going to help you drive pipeline, right? And the other thing is, how much of that pipeline should be sourced by marketing? I think industry average is around 35% should be marketing sourced. At my team today, when I look at all pipeline for the company, right, marketing source, we're at around 55 to 60%. So that means that the first time that a customer or prospect is interacting with Zscaler is because of a marketing asset. It's not a salesperson, or it's not coming from the partner organization as well. So understand where you stand with that, right, and fix it. Because I promise you, if product marketing and marketing is driving the most revenue and driving the most pipeline, your teams will listen to you, your leaders will listen to you, and you as a product marketer will be elevated as a result of that. The other piece, what's your conversion rate? Just because you're bringing in marketing source pipeline does not mean it's actually turning into real dollars, right? So look at the dollars in, how does that actually trickle down to closed deals? So you need to kind of walk back through that process, right? There's the lead comes in, it becomes a real marketing qualified lead, a sales qualified lead, it becomes a meeting, a POC, and then a closed deal as a result of that, right? But you need to be able to track that, and there's tools that can help you do it. So the second aspect of it, driving a unique marketing plan that can actually help accomplish those goals, okay? But you need to have the data to begin with, and then you start getting into the marketing piece. Don't go two before one, right? Don't just go and kind of drive creative marketing without understanding the numbers behind it, because your impact, both externally and internally, will be less than. So where's your low-hanging fruit today, right? Think about that for a second. Right? If you were to go out and position your product based on the numbers that you know, where would you go after? Right? For me, it's a lot of it is my install base, right? We have a lot of customers. How do I upsell my existing customers that don't have ZPA today, in my example, right? But think about what you can do that at a really tactical level. The other aspect that a lot of teams like to use are promos and test drives. I think these are phenomenal ways to actually get folks and use marketing to drive revenue. So promotions, right? We have this offer where if you take out your existing, let's say VPN, we'll give you 6 months free of Zscaler service. Leverage that. Well, we built out something called ZPA Interactive, which is a 7-day hosted experience of ZPA as well. Where all they have to do is a prospect can go to a Marketo form, fill it out, and all of a sudden they have this 7-day hosted test drive of our instance, and they didn't even have to talk to a sales organization, right? Again, using marketing to drive your revenue. What's your share of voice in the market, and how do you leverage SEO and SEM today? So share of voice is important, right? So working closely with your PR teams, the media outlets that are out there, Information Week or Dark Reading, whatever it is, depending on your industry, you know, kind of who your media players are there, and SEO and SEM. So SEO is critical, right? So all your organic search that you do and the keywords and the H1 tags that you put into your content, don't ever underestimate that, right? Because Google is a powerful tool. And if you show up within that first 10, that first page, you're in good shape. You start slipping to 2 and 3. I mean, how often do we go to page 2 and 3, guys? All right, not that often. All right, so always think about that as well. The teams that can help you, right? Think about that. Not every team is going to be critical. I don't do a ton of work with engineering. In Zscaler, it's more so product management. It's the LDRs, it's demand gen. In fact, using your LDRs or SDRs, in some cases we call them lead development reps at Zscaler. Some call them sales development reps. What we're actually doing is driving targeted upsell initiatives, right? So they'll go out, do call blitzes, and get people engaged, get those meetings set. That's some of the traction you need to drive, right? Because until you get that respected with the sales organization, it's harder to kind of work back from there, right? You need to first prove it out with the LDRs, drive revenue. The LDRs have relationships with your RSMs or your sales reps, right? So work that angle instead. And you'll be surprised at how many reps start calling you to ask them for sales pitches and for thoughts around how to actually help them drive success in their deals. The third aspect of it, work with your CMO and PM as your go-to-market team, okay? So differentiation points and understanding your product are really critical. And this is what I talked about before. You don't have to be a super deep dive. No, you don't have to know every single bell and whistle or features within your product, but you have to know what's going to differentiate you and help you stand out. This is really important. And your product managers are going to be the ones to help you drive that and understand it because they're closest to the product, right? So keep that in mind always. The other thing is developing customer-focused campaigns. A lot of companies make this mistake of positioning our company as the hero, but we're not. We're the guide, right? The hero are your customers, right? So think of every amazing story that's been out there. You have a character, right, who has a challenge. They then meet a guide who gives them a plan, gives them a call to action. They have this, rush with failure, and then there's a win, right? So you can insert any major stories, Star Wars, any of that kind of stuff, and that same story tends to play out. But think about what that looks like for your brand, okay? Customer facing, right? Think about your customer first. The other piece, identify which assets are actually going to drive your biggest drivers or be your biggest pipeline drivers. Not all assets are equal, right? Webinars at Zscaler do really well. They have better conversion rates. So, I mean, you might have white papers or solution briefs that stand out amongst others. So we use tools like Visible or Bitbucket, Visible or BrightFunnel that can actually help you do some more of that marketing attribution so you can understand what are those specific assets that you can leverage. As a product marketer, it helps you focus, Instead of just going out and building a ton of content, you can focus on the right kind of content and parse out all the other stuff that's not necessarily working. So highly recommend looking at tools that can help you be a little more focused in your marketing efforts as well. This was a pretty interesting one here. I've been reading this book called Building a Story Brand. Highly recommend this book. And it talks about different call to actions, right? So you can have a direct call to action, or you can have a transitional. So when you work with your demand gen teams, identify, do you want to have the sign up for a demo now, or try now, or buy now type direct pieces? Or do you want to have more transitional where it's the freemiums, where it's the test drives? Maybe for your case, it might be the direct ones that work out best. In some cases, it might be the transitional. But be able to kind of differentiate between those two and leverage the ones that make the most sense for you. The other thing about being a CEO is being a thought leader. I think Elon Musk is one of the best thought leaders in the world. I don't think many people would argue that. But the interesting thing is we actually have a lot in common with product marketing and Elon Musk, because guess what? A lot of what we're doing is very similar to it. What are we doing, right? We're creating the vision for a better way in all the messaging that we drive, right? So whatever challenge it is that your customers are facing today, right? We are building a message and a positioning statement that helps them understand that it exists and that we can help them solve it. The other piece that we're doing is we're actually showcasing those who have actually accomplished it. So that's where our customer references come in. Right? A lot of organizations, especially with the Zscaler brand, it's kind of a transition to go from the old world to this new world of cloud. And the best way to actually kind of get people over that hump or that fear of embracing a new way or new architecture is showing others who have done that. So a lot of you are working with customers. You're building out customer references or doing customer interviews, right? So that's half the battle already when you think about it. The other piece is providing them with a way to actually do it, right? This product that you're building positioning for, building these decks for, and hopefully pitching those decks as well for, is doing that. So product marketers are already thought leaders. We're just not seeing ourselves that way. It's important. So the next time you have that opportunity to do a media interview or whatever it might be, or to be interviewed or to actually give the pitch yourself, do it, right? Stand out. Which brings us to our next point here. I talked about this before, right? We need to kind of get away from this idea of being just the slide person or the slide jockey, right? Be comfortable with actually getting in front of customers and positioning it, which means you need to have that conviction. And that conviction comes from understanding the product, understanding your customer, and of course, understanding the content. The good thing is you're already building the content so you know it. So I highly recommend that your growth goal for each of you in this room should be think about how you can get more involved in presenting to customers if you're not already today, because it's critical, right? Again, that first slide I showed you in the beginning, right? There's this idea of like, we don't really know as product marketers what we're geared towards, what we're working on, right? We want more leadership, we want more influence, but we need to actually put in the more work to get there, right? And in fact, it's gonna be extra work because we don't come from a technical background in many cases. Right? If you work in the Valley, a lot of it is very tech driven. They want their most technical people in front of it, right? Product marketing is often not even allowed to be in a customer meeting in many cases. But you need to help fight that, right? All of you here are part of this new PMM 2.0 movement. But you have to realize that because no one's just going to get up and do it. Your CSO isn't going to do it. Your product team isn't going to help you do it. Why? Because they like that glory. They like being bought in and being the go-to and the heroes behind it, right? Why would they want more people coming in and taking some of that glory? But it's up to you to do it because we're product marketers. So this is an important image. I mean, when you stop working on slides, you'll be so surprised at what else you can see, right? There's a lot more to it, right? There's the challenge. You'll be able to understand and pick up when your deck is being presented to customers, what are the things that are really kind of hooking them? When are they nodding or smiling or saying yes within a meeting? And take notes of that, right? But unless you kind of get out of that slide world where I'm just building PowerPoint after PowerPoint, it's gonna be really difficult for you to get to that point. One of my favorite books in the world is a book called Think and Grow Rich. Who here has ever heard of this book? Phenomenal. It's actually more than I thought. I'm really, really glad to see this. This was written by a guy named Napoleon Hill during the Great Depression. And the whole goal of it was to actually inspire people to kind of get back in the market and showcase that, America is still strong, even though in this, terrible time in reality, right? And A gentleman named Andrew Carnegie, who a lot of you might know if you know a little bit about American history. He was one of the steel magnates in the world. Andrew Carnegie paid this gentleman, Napoleon Hill, to actually write a book on, what makes a leader great. So he went out and he interviewed like 10,000 people, right? Edison, Charles Schwab, J.D. Rockefeller, all to understand and build this profile of the best leader. And within this, he has this concept of the mind group. And these are your selected peers and folks who are the folks who are going to help you be successful in your role. The whole idea behind this is you don't have to know it all. You just have to know someone who does, and groups of people who do, and leverage that to your power. So he gives this awesome example of Henry Ford. For many of you who don't know, Henry Ford was actually brought to court because he had a very, I would say, non-advanced degree. I think it was, he tapped out at like high school, if that. And the prosecutor said, there's no way you could have built this successful company called Ford, right, without doing something wrong, something illegal. So he was actually literally brought to court from this, and there's people that actually have recorded his responses to it. And the lawyer at the time was kind of grilling them on all these silly questions, like during the Revolutionary War, how many British soldiers came, how many left? He's like, I don't know, considerably less, right? And at a certain point, he was like, you know what? Forget it. At my desk, I have an electrical panel. I have 6 buttons, and I can press the smartest person in that function to come to my desk. I don't need to hear about this anymore. Literally, that's what he said in court. And it's true. We don't have to be the most technical. We don't have to know it all. But we can build a group that can help us get there. That's called mind group. So I challenge each and every one of you to build your mind group if you don't have it already. Many of you do. Maybe it's your product manager. Maybe it's your demand gen person. Maybe it's your analyst that you're really close to at Gartner or IDC, or people still use IDC, I don't know, or Forrester, right? Whatever it is, build those relationships. And I'll give you an example of who my mind group is. I love the Avengers. I don't know, anyone ever see Endgame, the newest one? It's sick. Oh my God, it was like the best movie ever. It was sick. Thank you so much. And I took this idea and I said, you know what? Here's what my mind group looks like. So if you need a template, look at this. Industry analysts. I work closely with Gartner. At least once a month, we have a Gartner SaaS day where we connect with them. Demand gen, the sales rock stars. I have my kind of Rolodex of my top 10 that I like to work with. You don't need to work with every single one of your reps. Figure out your mini group, work with them, learn from them, and you'll be really successful. Key executives, your customers, amazing leaders as well. So I want to kind of bring it all full circle again. To not succeed is to look like this. I don't want any one of the people in this room to ever look like this, so don't do it. Challenge yourself. Get in front of the customers. Be differentiated. And remember these 3 things. See yourself as a CEO. Spend less time working on slide decks. Look up, right? Be a business leader. Be the CEO, right? And elevate the entire team as you do so, okay? And in closing, there could be a CEO inside each and every one of you. You just have to believe it. You have to find out. Thank you.
Awesome. Fantastic. So that was one of the best presentations we've had in 2 days. And
Thank you.
Chris will be right outside to talk because I know we got one more to go. That was great.
Thank you so much.
Chris.
Contact information's there. I would love to connect with you. Thank you, everyone.